hall with over 200 companies, spanning more than 4 acres of exhibits, or earn CEUs from 50-plus seminars and workshops. This October 10th and 11th at the Landscape Expo Long Beach, explore the Water Conservation Center, featuring 6 on-point seminars and surrounded by the latest technology in conserving California's most precious resource. The Landscape Expo is also the best place to shop for trucks and tractors, with 6 major Southern California truck dealerships and 12 major brand equipment dealers, including Dodge, Chevy, Ford, Isuzu, JCB, John Deere, and dozens of commercial lawn care and arbor care equipment providers. Virtually all of the major brands of equipment you need as a landscape contractor or a maintenance professional. At the Landscape Expo, you'll also find every major irrigation brand, including the Toro and Irritrol product lines, as well as wholesale nurseries, outdoor tree care demonstrations, live equipment demos, and the all-new Landscape Design Center, featuring a full-size bocce court and dozens of design-oriented product vendors. There is a $20 entrance fee at the door, but if you register at landscapeonline.com before September 28th, we'll waive that fee. And if you plan on attending seminars, just type the Water Zone in the discount window and you'll receive 20% off all your seminars. Remember, the Landscape Expo, Wednesday and Thursday, October 10th and 11th at the Long Beach Convention Center. Visit landscapeonline.com for more information.
And just so everybody knows, we're going to be there. Chris and I are going to be there.
Yes, absolutely will.
Doing that. So now we're going to tune it into Ingy, Miss Ingy, and she is just a wonderful person that I know, and I'm glad she does our ag shows, and I hope she never leaves.
Good evening, Ingy. How are you?
I'm very well. Thank you, Rob and Chris. It's a pleasure to be here, and you're right. We do have a fantastic guest tonight from halfway around the world, or even more, from Australia, Julian Cribb. He's an author. Hails from, I think, the western part of Australia. And he has written some dynamite books that are really big picture, and they're going to take us beyond California for sure. We're going to be talking about the age of food and an even lighter topic, surviving the 21st century. So I'm really excited about Julian being with us this evening. Welcome, Julian.
Thanks, Inga. How are you?
I'm doing really well. I have to say, when I was in Australia in June, where I heard you speak and discovered you, I found that my niece was intrigued with the idea that I was 17 hours or like a day ahead, 8 hours behind, and that spawned all sorts of conversations about, well, if you're a day ahead, can you, are you like Nostradamus and can see the future and look backwards and know what stock to buy the next day and then become wealthy overnight because you're ahead of us? I'm sure you wish the answer.
Well, don't we wish?
yeah, we wish. But anyway, thanks for joining us. I know it's Friday morning for you. Is that what it is, or Friday afternoon for you in Australia?
It's Friday morning. Yeah, and
it is Friday morning. Good. All right. Well, TGIF to you, and let's just get right into it. I'd like to, for our listening audience, I'd like to read your bio. It's very impressive, and we'll just start with that. Julian, your career has included appointments as a newspaper editor, a scientific correspondent for the Australian newspaper, director of national awareness for Australia's science agency, CISRO, and president of National Professional Bodies for Ag Journalism and Science Communication. Your work includes over 9,000 media articles, wow, and 9 books, and you've received more than 30 awards for journalism. You're also a member of numerous scientific boards and advisory panels and president of the National Professional Bodies for Ag Journalism and Science Communication. Your internationally acclaimed book, The Coming Famine, explores the question of whether we can feed humanity through the mid-century peak in numbers and food demand. So we're going to kind of be concentrating on that on the first half of the show because food is directly related to water, as we all know. And just so our audience knows, your books have included The Forgotten Country, Australian Agriculture, The White Death, Sharing Knowledge, Dry Times, Open Science, The Coming Famine, Poisoned Planet, and your latest book, which I just finished reading today, Surviving the 21st Century, which explores the central question facing humanity today: how can we best survive the 10 great existential challenges that are now coming together to confront us with our huge population explosion over the last 150 years? So welcome, Julian. Tell me, before we dive into some of these pretty heavy topics, tell us a little bit about your background and what led you to this path of being a widely acclaimed author, speaker, and really you're an evangelist for humanity.
Well, it's really the fact that I'm a journalist and a newspaper editor from way back, particularly in the agriculture sector, reporting on agriculture, talking to farmers, talking to scientists. I've been talking to scientists for over 45 years now, and I felt it was time to share with a wider population the sort of things that I have learned from scientists. And in the last 10 years in particular, I have been finding more and more scientists coming up to me and saying, look, we don't know what kind of a world we're leaving our kids, but it looks pretty frightening. I think most of us who are well informed are aware that the world of the future is going to be a pretty difficult and dangerous place. But the average person is not aware of that. And the purpose of my book really is to make them aware and to help people come up with solutions to the many problems that the overpopulation of human beings and the over-demand for resources that we're putting on the planet is creating for us.
Yes, too many people and not enough land, air, water to really feed us properly. So this idea of yours, the age of food, tell us more about that, that a food revolution is underway and that food will change, quote unquote. Of course, here at the Water Zone. Yeah, go ahead.
I like to think that, we had the Stone Age and we had the Iron Age and we had the Computer Age and we had the Age of Rock and Roll and all of that. We really are in the food age now. And the food age, it's not only the fact that the world menu is so diverse, there's so many different styles of food, there's so many different ways of producing it. It's every single media you go on, whether it's TV, the internet, whatever it is, you're hit with an avalanche of food. Basically, people are talking recipes, they're talking diet, they're talking healthy food, unhealthy food. You're absolutely bombarded with this stuff. Food is actually the most important thing that we do. The human jawbone has got more impact on the planet than the motor car, right? It is enormous quantities of soil are washed into the ocean every year because of the agriculture that produces our food. Phenomenal amounts of water are wasted every year by the act of producing our food. Enormous quantities of poisons and pesticides are sprayed all over the planet every year to grow our food. So, it is unquestionably our biggest impact on the earth. And we need to become more aware of it if we are to buy food that is sustainable and healthy, and to shop wisely, in other words, so that we create a healthier, more sustainable planet.
Isn't food production the largest consumer of energy on the planet as well, or a third of it, or a half of it, or something like that?
Probably around about a third. It certainly produces about a third of the world's carbon emissions, which means that the act of growing food is destroying the very climate that allows us to grow food. So that's where we have a real worry. So we're emitting all of these carbon, from fossil fuels, from pesticides, from land clearing and things like that. We're emitting all this carbon into the atmosphere, which is warming the planet, and it's moving the Earth out of the sweet spot in which agriculture arose, the stable period called the Holocene. That is now extinct, and we're moving back into a very dangerous and unstable part of, epoch, really. And if you think about it, Hurricane Harvey, Hurricane Florence, Superstorm Sandy, these are the kinds of things that are coming down now as we emit more carbon. So food production is going to become dangerously unstable as we advance into the middle part of the century. And that is a problem that we've got to solve. We can solve it, but we need to start thinking hard about it now.
Yeah, that is what's refreshing about your writings is that you're not just a doomsdayer, rather you do suggest solutions. So tell us about the 5 that you cited in this particular lecture on the age of food, and I'll just let you run through them because they are, they do propose solutions to these issues that you just spoke of, that, the last 150 years we have way too many people, the climate is changing, the age in which our agriculture evolved, the Holocene, that temperature regime is now changing. So we really have to move to something different. So tell us about what these 5 things are that's going to help us out.
Well, think for a moment about a city. A city like Los Angeles, a city like San Francisco, Sydney, Australia, London, Paris, or Shanghai, any of the big cities of the world. Collectively, those cities are gulping down 14 quadrillion calories of food every single day. And they are also using and throwing away 1.5 million cubic kilometers of fresh water. So cities take this enormous quantity of nutrients in and a whole lot of water in, and then they just chuck it down the sewer pipe, very often into the ocean, where we will never see it again, either of those things. Now, we know the world is becoming desperately short of water. There are going to be water crises all over the place in the coming 20 or 30 years. So we can't afford for our cities to throw away all the water and all the nutrients that they currently do. So we need to build a city that reuses the water and the nutrients, and it can do this with many ways. There are many high-tech ways of producing food where you can recycle the nutrients and the water that we are currently wasting. So it's really a case of reinventing history, because we used to recycle these things a long time ago. We've kind of lost the habit of that in the 20th century. So, if you think about, LA or San Francisco or somewhere like that, think about those cities. Instead of flushing their water out into the ocean, flushing their nutrients out into the ocean, recapturing those things and reusing them to produce food, then you will have a sustainable food system. That's the first one, recycling. The next one, we really need to get over this idea that you can grow food using poison. I mean, I know we need herbicides and insecticides to control pests in crops, but that is basically a 20th century solution to a 21st century problem. We cannot go around poisoning the planet the way we are at the moment. We're finding these toxins in the blood of infants that are newly born. We're finding them in the milk of nursing mothers and things like that. We can't go on poisoning the world's children at the rate we're doing it. So we've got to come up with a clean, sustainable way to grow food, and lots of those do exist. So the next thing is really to get off this chemical kick that we've got in our agricultural systems and move on to more organic systems that will protect the health of the human race. The next one, really, sustainability. We can't go on farming by cutting down forests. We can't do what they're doing in the Amazon and expect the world not to end up with terrible mess. So we have to find ways of producing food that don't involve large areas of land. Okay, like the great biologist D.O. Wilson says, we've got to give half the world back to the animals and plants that we have presently destroyed. If we are, not to completely, devastate the environment that we rely on to live ourselves. The next one is new technology. There is a raft of new ways to produce food coming down the line. Vertical farms, biocultured meat, all sorts of ways of producing food highly intensively, but with very little land and very little water. So there's a lot of technology in space now, and California is one of the leading places in the world for these new ways of producing food. There's a lot of great ideas. It's like Silicon Valley all over again, except in food and not in computers. So that's a really important thing. And so really we're going to see a food system in the future where about a third of the world's food is produced in cities, about a third of it will be produced on farms, but they're ecological eco-farms, basically, that are sustainable and are not damaging their landscape. And about a third of it will come from aquaculture. Now, aquaculture is booming, but we're going to farm fish in a whole lot of different and new and high-tech ways.
Well, that sounds like a pretty good roadmap going forward. A third in the cities, a third on sustainable farms, and then aquaculture. So for our listening audience, give us an idea of what growing food in a city is going to look like. That's probably hard for people to imagine if they're not, familiar with some of these high-tech solutions. I've seen some of them, out on the farm. In fact, in Australia, you have some really high-tech strawberry culture systems that I hadn't seen anywhere else that were very intriguing, very high production, also requiring high investment, though. So talk us through a little bit about the economics of how can we afford these higher-tech ways of growing food, more intensive and so forth. And I suppose it has to do with offsetting the cost of what we're currently doing. So help us envision how we're going to grow food in the cities.
Well, you can grow food on your balcony if you live in a tall apartment block, and people are developing micro farms, which you can put on your balcony. IKEA, the Swedish furniture company, has developed a sphere that you can put in your living room and will grow all the herbs, fresh herbs, and salad vegetables that you need. So there are little forms of food production that are like that. And then you've got, the farms on the roofs of buildings, such as you have up and down the Hudson River in New York right now. You have farms that are inside buildings, such as they have in Holland, in Iceland, in Canada, and especially in California as well. For example, the airline Emirates just spent $50 million building a vertical farm that is designed to produce 225,000 airline meals every single day.
Wow!
So these things go from the very small, the micro, the do-it-yourself, people farming, on road verges and under bridges and things like that in the city, to the macro, where you have Jeff Bezos, the owner of Amazon.com, talking about putting vertical farms into 500 of the world's top cities. So, this is going to be a food revolution like none other, like nothing since the 18th century, in fact, where food moves off the farm and goes into these urban high-tech things. And then you've got the biocultures I mentioned before, which is basically meat grown from animal stem cells. It's real meat, but it just never went blue. So you can produce real meat for hamburger, for sausages, frankfurters, that kind of thing, but it'll come out of a big steel vessel. It won't take up much space and it won't use a lot of water, but it will be real meat, and it will be part of the snack food industry, that we know and love, for meat pies and sausages. I mean, you don't really know what's in a sausage anyway, do you? You don't dare ask.
That's kind of scary, actually.
But if it's meat produced from embryo stem cells, as I say, it's real meat, it's healthy, it's safe, and it can be produced, on a fraction of the space with a fraction of the water and for a fraction of the price. It doesn't involve massive feedlots. It doesn't involve huge acreages of feed grains and things like that. So, this is going to completely transform the nature of the food that we're eating at the moment.
So in 50 years, we may be eating hamburgers that were cultured, actually, from stem cells, or I know there's a trend with people like Impossible Foods and other similar companies that are really recreating a pretty similar meat taste just with plant-based products. So some of those will still need to be grown traditionally or hopefully more sustainably, but the essence of where the material actually came from is going to be much different, huh?
I think you'll see it within 10 years.
10 years?
It's coming much faster. It's like the renewable energy revolution. Slow start, bumbles along for a while, and then suddenly the rocket takes off.
Yeah.
These new methods of producing food are going to skyrocket in the 2020s and the 2030s, simply because food itself is unsustainable. We cannot feed the world growing food by the same methods that the ancient Romans used, which is what we're trying to do currently. Broad-acre, single-crop agriculture is not going to work out. When it destroys the soil, it wastes the water, and in a hot climate-challenged world. That's just not going to be the way we do it in future. So all these other things are coming down. So think of the energy. Think of renewable energy. Think of all that wind and solar that you're putting in California and translate that to food. Okay, so this is the renewable food revolution, and it's coming fast.
Wow, pretty exciting. Okay, one more topic before we go to break. Your idea of rewilding is related to a topic that we've recently discussed on the Water Zone with University of California's Dr. Glenda Humiston regarding the working lands concept. In other words, optimizing the ecosystem services our farms, forests, rivers, oceans, and native landscapes provide the planet and humanity. You just a few minutes ago talked about kind of repurposing half of the planet to rewilding. Walk us through that. How is that going to happen?
Okay, well, that proposal comes from the world's greatest living biologist, E.O. Wilson. He's a professor at Harvard. And he has written a book called Half Earth. And he says that if we want to save the creatures that we are, and the plants and the trees that we are currently exterminating, we are going to have to give half the world back to nature. Now, the bit that I've added into that is that if we are able to produce our food by aquaculture and by city farms, as well as by ecological farms, then we're going to be able to do that. That's going to be quite feasible. But we need to start paying farmers to actually look after the landscape. Now, at the moment, farmers look after the landscape and the wild animals out of their own good nature and out of their own hip pocket. I think that's very unfair. We're expecting them to be the stewards for the planet, but not to not to charge us anything. I think we need to start paying farmers as the stewards of the earth. Farmers and indigenous people, like the North American Indians, the Aborigines in Australia, the Sami in Scandinavia, and so on. We need to start funding these people to restore the wild world. And at the same time as we're contracting our farms, we can contract our farms to the best areas of the world, the most fertile soils, the most benign climate, and so on. Instead of farming the vulnerable edges of the agricultural zone, we can contract it, and we can replace that agricultural production with food grown in cities and on fish farms.
What? Okay, that sounds like something that is doable, and if hopefully the world's populations can buy into that. You're an Australian, we're Americans. Do you think that most people think that these problems are something that is somewhere else and isn't really here at home, and that people, aren't going to have to change all that much? Or do you think that people are getting the message, especially the millennials? I think the younger folks maybe are.
I think that the older people, thoughtful older people with a scientific background, grandparents who are worried about their grandkids, and millennials who are growing up inheriting a world that is way worse than the ones their parents inherited. Those are the people who are concerned now, and I think governments worldwide are letting them down. Okay, they are not taking action soon enough, and we are going to see more Hurricane Florences as the wake-up call, or more big fire seasons like you've just had in California, and we're just about to get in Australia. Those are the writing on the wall, that we are not managing the planet well, and we need to start improving. We need to lift our game, basically. There is concern. I don't think there's real concern or real fear yet, but that is coming as a succession of these hammer blows increases.
So is the idea of the year of food and the age of food really an outreach and an educational effort?
Oh, yes, it is. I mean, food is driven by the consumer, okay? It is consumer demand in the supermarket and in the farmer's market and things like that sets the price of food and that tells the farmers what to grow. Okay, we need to educate the world's consumers to start buying food that is sustainable, not unsustainable food, and healthy. In other words, food that doesn't kill them. Because, something like 3/4 of Americans now die by their own hand, which is the hand holding the fork. That means 3/4 of Americans die from a food or diet-related disease. Heart disease, cancer, they're all connected to food. We desperately need to transition our diet away from this toxic industrial thing back to a healthy, sustainable, fresh diet. And there's lots of farmers very happy to do that, but they're not getting the consumer signal. So the age of food and a year of food in all the schools, junior schools on the planet, is all about educating the consumer to demand the right kind of food, both for the planet and for themselves.
Well, once again, the power of the dollar. You say that we can implement change by shopping correctly, and I guess that's how it's always been. We really can go from traditional to organic. Organic wasn't even in the vernacular 30 or 40 years ago, but consumers wanted it, so we now have it. And I guess we can change again as consumers demand it with their dollars. So, all right. Well, Rob, I think we can go to a commercial break and then come back to discuss the second topic, surviving the 21st century.
Absolutely. I'm excited about the vertical farming. I've seen that in action in Seattle, Washington. They had this industrial warehouse with really tall ceilings, like 30 feet high, and they had these tubes going straight up, and they were growing stuff like you wouldn't believe. They had simulated sunlight with special LED lights. It was incredible of how much they could grow in this space versus if it was on horizontal land. So very apropos, very interesting, and I like that a lot. So anyway, we're going to go off to a commercial, and we'll be back in just a moment. So stick around, second half coming up.
KCAA Loma Linda, 1050 AM, K292FQ Riverside, and K293CF Moreno Valley.
If you knew there was a pipe cement that works better than the one you're currently using, is better for you and the environment, and costs the same or less, would you buy it? Well, no-brainer, right? Weldon, the trusted leader in solvent cements for over 60 years, is pleased to introduce a new line of solvent cements that does all that. Introducing the Eco Series line of solvent cements for PVC piping systems. Not only does it work great and set fast, it also has 30% lower solvent emissions and less smelly fumes, a better workplace environment when you're installing pipes. But don't just take our word for it. Eco Series products are the only solvent cements that are Green Seal certified for environmental innovation for effective performance, improved working conditions, and for use with potable water. Now available in a medium-bodied fast-setting blue formula, 905 Eco, and a regular-bodied fast-setting clear formula, 900 Eco. Pick up a can today from your local distributor and see, smell, and feel the difference, just like Joe Sweat, president of Sunrise Irrigation, did. He said, after using Weldon's 905 Eco, we immediately noticed the application was smooth and there was noticeably less odor than other blue solvent cements on the market. The guys love it. To learn more about Eco Solvent Cements from Weldon, visit the website at www.weldon.com or call the Technical Service Hotline at 877-477-8327. That's 877-477-8327.
Let's talk drought stress. No one likes burnt plants or grass, especially your customers. So, when it's hotter than a tin roof in Tallahassee, what are you going to do? Water the problem away? Not only does that abuse a vital resource, it's illegal in many cities. Here's a quick and easy solve that won't get you in trouble with Mother Nature or Johnny Law. Applied as a year-round program, Moisture Manager from Lesco supplements regular irrigation by attracting moisture to treated areas, thus making the moisture available to plant roots. This maintains wettability between waterings and rainfall, allowing soil to accept water as it becomes available, and making the water more accessible to the plant roots. Boom! More green, less watering, and a great new reason to see your customers on a recurring basis. With Lesco Moisture Manager and Site 1, high heat is no sweat.
Are you interested in free water-efficient appliances, native plant demonstration gardens, water tastings, raffle prizes, food trucks, and more fun activities? Well, Upper St. Gabriel Valley Municipal Water District has the perfect event for the whole family. Stop by Waterfest on Saturday, October 13th at Arcadia County Park from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. WaterFest is an annual water conservation event to celebrate our most precious resource and learn about the importance of water efficiency. Visit upperdistrict.org for event details. See you at WaterFest on Saturday, October 13th.
Welcome back to the second half of the Water Zone Show. We have Mr. Julian Cribb from all the way from Australia. Can I ask just one quickie question, Ingy?
Yeah, please.
So, Mr. Cribb, just curious. As I said, I've been to some of these vertical farms, but do you notice, or do you know if it cuts down on diseases that they get out in the regular lands when it is exposed to everything versus being in an indoor controlled environment?
Yes, you can have, in an indoor controlled environment, you can have phenomenal crop hygiene. When you can keep out all the bad bugs that are going to eat your crop, for example, as long as you're observing very high levels of quarantine and hygiene within that farm,
right.
You can control most of the fungi and things like that as well by changing the atmosphere and things. So, yes, a lot of these farms are zero chemical. The ones that I've seen in, for example, in Europe and the ones I'm hearing about in the Middle East, they're intending to produce the food without any form of chemicals.
Excellent. Thank you. I appreciate that. Very interesting. I'm glad you're on the show. Ingy, back to you.
Yeah, thanks. We're going to move now from talking about food to an equally heavy topic, surviving the 21st century, which is the title of Julian's latest book. He's written 9 books in Surviving the 21st Century. Humanity's 10 Great Challenges and How We Can Overcome Them are what we're going to talk about the second half of the show. And I suppose that we need to survive the 21st century in order to worry about feeding ourselves. So they're very well linked together. So, Julian, you've written that this is the greatest question facing humanity today, and that there are 10 major existential threats. Please walk us through these. And just for our listening audience, spoiler alert, don't freak out. There are solutions, and that's what's so great about this book, is that it's not a doomsdayer book. It has solutions, but it does very eloquently and with lots of facts lay out that there definitely are some threats to our current situation. So tell us about them, Julian.
Okay, well, the real issue, we have an existential emergency, which means that we're going to have difficulty as a species, certainly as a civilization, surviving this century. And this is not because of any one major threat, say nuclear weapons or climate change or something like that. It is because of 10 that are all coming together at the same time. Now, those 10, I'll just list them. First of all, ecological collapse. If you wreck the environment, you won't be able to live in it, basically. Resource depletion. We're running out of an awful lot of things that are vital to our survival, particularly water, soil, and timber. Weapons of mass destruction, well, we know all about those. Climate change, I think a lot of people would be familiar with the arguments there. Global poisoning is the extent to which we have distributed toxic chemicals across the entire Earth. Think of the Great Pacific Plastic Garbage Patch and things like that, but also think about what's in your food, your air, from urban pollution and so forth, and your water. There's food insecurity. America may be secure in its food supply, Australia may be secure, but there's lots of places that aren't food secure, and that needs to be fixed, or we're going to see wars. Population. We're still expanding the world population. Not growing as fast as it used to, but it's still way beyond the capacity of the Earth to support a human population at current levels of demand. And of course, we've got mega cities growing up. There's not one major city on the planet that can feed itself. So what happens if the trucks don't arrive one day? That city starves within a few days. So we're looking at issues like that. Pandemic diseases, they're related to food scarcity and so on. And plus, we're unleashing a whole lot of new technology, like artificial intelligence, universal surveillance, and things like that, about which the public has no control whatsoever. And we really don't know what the consequences of doing that are. Some very wise people, Mr. Musk, Mr. Gates, Stephen Hawking, the British physicist, have warned us about this, and we need to start heeding their warning. So the issue that I'm raising is that we've got these 10 things coming together at one time fix one existential risk, and what you do is you make another one worse. So we need to fix all 10 of them together at the same time. And that's what I'm basically writing about, how we solve these problems, both as a species and also as individuals.
And you failed to mention the last one, at least on my list, which was really interesting in my view, the self-delusion risk that people just are kind of sleepwalking towards disaster. So tell us more about the solutions that you're outlining in your book, especially the ideas about energy and water and the circular economy and the creative economy, to name just a few.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, California is in the absolute world bow wave with energy when it comes to energy. Most Californians and a lot of Australians know that we have to get rid of fossil fuels, and we've really got to do it in the next 10 years. If we don't do it in the next 10 years, then the carbon we have put up in the atmosphere is going to wreck the climate for centuries to come. So basically, you know, we're on a very short fuse with regard to that. But, you know, it's things are happening. Things are happening very, very fast. Very encouragingly, we're seeing all this renewable energy. And that's the kind of the style of thing that's got to happen in all the other areas. We've got to stop, you know, spreading poison all around the planet. We have got to stop cutting down forests. We have got to develop a food system that is sustainable. So the solutions in the book are that there's nothing there that will shock or surprise anybody. But what is really critical is the sense of urgency about these things. We've got to start acting as a species, and we've got to start thinking together as a species about how we solve these questions.
Yes, and one of the things that you talked about, too, was algal fluids to derive our energy from. Tell us a little more about that.
Well, look, algae have been turning sunlight into oil for the last 2 billion years. They're very, very good at it. The fossil oil we get out of the ground is, in fact, just dead algae. If we want totally renewable, totally sustainable source of transport fuel, all we have to do is grow it in algae. And there are lots of algae farms through the United States, in the Middle East, in India, around the world, Australia, things like that are experimenting now with producing fresh solar energy in the form of oil made from algae. And if you do that, it would only take an area the size of, say, Borneo to grow the entire world's transport fuel supply. Or an area you could produce the whole U.S. fuel supply that's necessary in an area the size of Maryland. So, you know, this is a great solution. It gets us off the fossil fuels. Algae reabsorb the carbon dioxide as they're growing, so you have a climate-neutral way of putting fuel in your motor car.
Okay, that's another great idea, and one that I had not known very much about until reading your book. So algae technology. And how do we grow this algae?
You grow them in a pond, which can be salt water. You use your waste supplies from your city to feed them, and you give them lots of sunlight. So anywhere that's sunny, like the southwest of the United States, like the Central Australian deserts, like the Arabian Peninsula, they're ideal places for growing the algae. And if you grow the algae to make oil, the other half of the algae is protein and carbohydrate. You can feed it to cows, you can feed it to humans, you can feed it to other animals, and you can feed it to fish. So algae farming is going to be one of the big take-off industries over the next 30 or 40 years.
Okay, well, there's maybe that's not seeing yesterday because you're in tomorrow, but you're seeing tomorrow, and maybe we can invest and behave appropriately. And one of the things you're saying is that people's shopping habits can actually elicit great change. Tell us how an average consumer can use the power of the dollar to help us survive the 21st century.
Yeah, well, at the moment, the power of the dollar is going to destroy all the things that we depend on. So it's going to destroy the climate, it's going to destroy the water supply, it's going to destroy the quality of the food. If we just allow the dollar to ride around. If, however, consumers start buying in an informed and educated fashion, they start choosing foods that are sustainable, that don't waste water, that don't waste soil, that don't use a lot of chemicals, then the supermarket very soon gets the signal. And the supermarket is not going to try and sell stuff that, the consumers don't want. So it really is all down to the consumer. The governments are never going to fix it. The governments are in bed with the giant chemical corporations and oil and coal corporations. And they're really not going to be bothered to try to fix this problem. It has to be fixed by the individual. And the individuals, us consumers, are sharing this knowledge worldwide at the speed of light on the internet and in social media. That's the really exciting thing. We are starting to pass knowledge around amongst us.
Yes, you talk about that quite a bit, that the internet and social media is definitely one of the solutions that, just like a baby in its second trimester starts to have all of its separate pieces connect and starts to be a sentient being, that you make the parallel that, human society today is now starting to connect, and we're becoming, like a world species. Tell us a little bit more about that and how the internet can help us, and then maybe some of the dark side of that, the thinking machines. Sometimes everybody thinking alike and having thinking machines can be a danger too.
Right. Well, look, we've been having discussions about survival since we sat around the campfire on the African savannah a million years ago. Okay, so we've been thinking about how we can survive, how we can stop the leopards eating the kids, all of that sort of stuff. Right? We're still having that discussion about human survival now, but it's taking place, as I say, in real time on social media. It's thousands of people around the world. In fact, half the world population is on the internet now, and by the mid to late 20s, the whole world population will be on the internet. So there will be a live discussion by the entire human species about how we survive, how we solve our problems together, rather than competing and doing one another injury. So basically, we're starting to see for the first time a discussion taking place at species level. So we're identifying problems like climate and toxicity and so on, or food scarcity or something like that, and we are also identifying and sharing the solutions to those things. So this is happening very fast. I think that renewable energy is a classic example. If renewable energy had happened back in the 1980s, there wasn't the internet there for the discussion, to air the discussion about what a great thing renewable energy is. It wouldn't have happened. It didn't happen back then, even though, there were windmills and what have you back then. It has happened now because the discussion is live around the planet among caring, intelligent people. So this is a very exciting moment in human history. We're evolving into a creature that can think not only as individuals, but also as a species. So this is a huge moment in human history. And we just need to take advantage of it.
Yes, and you're also talking about listening to and maybe subscribing to a different way of thinking of half of the people on our planet, the women, and how less like traditional males, they like to secure the human future. Women must lead in business, politics, religion, and society, is what you have written. Tell us a little bit more about your ideas there. That the success that we've achieved to date has mostly been driven by men, but our survival for the future will depend on us probably thinking a little more like women.
Absolutely. Look, women do not start wars. As a rule, it's very, very hard to find any women leaders who started a war. They may have been involved in them, but they never actually started. It's very hard to find women who've clear felled forests, who've ploughed up the oceans and emptied them of fish, who've degraded entire landscapes with large machines. Women just don't do that. Women tend to think about the next generation and the one after. They think about their kids and their grandkids. And so they have a slightly more conservative view of how you go about doing things. Now, men are great at fixing problems, okay? We generally, us men, we generally use either weapons or big machines or chemicals to fix the problem, and we say to hell with the consequences. It's not until later that we discover that this has destroyed the very system we were trying to protect, or it's released a whole lot of cancer-causing chemicals into the surroundings. So men have this kind of, fix it now, pay later sort of mentality. I believe that that is going to lead us into a very dark place if we allow it to trump. So we need women to become the leaders to a safer place of our entire species. And that means women taking the lead, not just in politics, but in religion, in business, in our social institutions, in every aspect. And I'm not just talking about one or two women. I am talking about a majority of women in all of these areas, because we need that kind of long-range, look after the grandkids thinking now.
Well, I think our upcoming election has more women running than ever before here in the United States, and maybe that's happening globally too. You've also written that businesses need to change from, what used to be kind of a longer view to somehow a change in the last 50 years or so, where CEOs were, pretty much purely compensated based on short-term results, have kind of wreaked havoc on the environment. As you were saying, we get the result now, we solve the problem now, and the heck with the consequences. So how are businesses going to change? And maybe more women in business will help that?
Yeah, well, you need to change businesses by changing the buying habits of consumers. It's as simple as that, because, all right, you might be able to regulate the behavior of businesses in the United States, but you can't regulate the behavior of businesses in China or India or, some Eastern European country. The only way you can control them is by consumers demanding products that are safe, sustainable, and healthy, and refusing to buy products that are dangerous, unsustainable, and unhealthy. Once they get the bottom line signal, those businesses will have to follow suit. They're never going to be controlled by regulation. They have to be controlled by money, because money is what makes the world go around, basically. The dangerous thing is that we have too much money sloshing around in the world economy, and we have a finite planet. So we have an infinite amount of money and a finite planet, and those two things don't really go well together.
Yeah, that was a fascinating concept that I read in your book today, that, money is basically a belief system, and there's infinite supply of it, but it buys resources that are not infinite. There's a finite amount of resources. So we really have to move to recycling our resources and making money in different ways, huh?
Yeah, I think we should change the nature of the world currency. At the moment, the world currencies are just a gambling chip used by a lot of speculators who don't really care about the human future. If you cast your mind back to American history, once upon a time, the US dollar was valued on the basis of the amount of gold in Fort Knox. I think we need to do a similar thing for a world currency. I think we need a world currency that reflects the current state of resources on the planet. So that if we cut down too many forests or we pollute too many rivers and lakes and things like that, your currency dwindles in value and your home dwindles in value. And, but if you look after those things and increase them, then the world currency increases in value and the world's wealth increases in value. So I think we need to actually go back to that concept of a currency which is pegged to something that is measurable and finite, not a currency that's just a bloody roulette chip.
Yeah, something tangible. And likewise, you're suggesting a global report card. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Well, the difficulty with all of these things, climate and poisoned planet and food and nuclear and so on, is that people don't know how dangerous the situation that we're in. So I'm proposing that we create a world report card, which could be on the side of your cereal packet, it could be in your mobile phone, it could be on the nightly news, like the Dow Jones Index. So this is a simple index that tells you whether today the human species got a bit safer or a bit more into danger as a result of all of these actions. It's a simple number. It's put together, obviously, by a complex scientific algorithm, but it reflects. So it's like the doomsday clock that the University of Chicago runs for nuclear threat. It's like that, only it reflects the sustainability of the human position on planet Earth. And that way it's giving people daily information as to how much risk we're actually in or how much better things are getting.
Well, that's a fascinating concept. Well, with the 2 or 3 minutes that we have left, tell us a little bit more about this self-delusion concept and sleepwalking to disaster as one of our greatest risks, and what you think we can do about it.
Well, Voltaire said that human beings, have the capacity to believe in anything they jolly well like to believe in, and he's right. So we invent our own realities. And of course, those realities have no bearing in real reality. And the danger with the existential risk that I'm talking about is that people say to themselves, "Oh, we needn't worry about that," or "We can't worry about that," or "God will fix it," or "There'll be some other, something will save me." That's not true. You look at the numbers, you look at the facts that I put together in that book, you realise that we are in a very dangerous place, and we need to get rid. Otherwise, we're not going to solve the problem. So overcoming this tendency to self-delusion is absolutely critical. And, there are people like Pope Francis, for example, in Laudato Si. He says that you've got to look after the environment, because if you don't, there will be nowhere for you to live. The environment, the clean air, the clean water will not be there to support you. That's good theology and it's good science. So we need these realistic appraisals of the situation that we're in. Otherwise, we are going to sleepwalk to disaster.
Yeah, another way of putting that is there's no jobs on a dead planet, right?
Absolutely, yeah. But I think people are still inclined to pass the idea of a dead planet rather than accepting it is a possible consequence of what we're doing.
Okay, folks. Well, this is a very important book. I recommend highly that people read it, Surviving the 21st Century by Julian Cribb. Julian, thank you so much for visiting with us this past hour. We will have this on iTunes next week, an edited version of this show. So if you missed it, you can catch it, or if you were intrigued, you can listen to it again. And I'll hand it back over to you, Rob.
Thank you. That was I was just sitting here in awe listening to all of that with Chris. It was just amazing to me.
Great to have you on the show, Julian. I thought that I was doing a great step by growing some basil on my windowsill, but now I've got to look a little farther in the future.
Well, we got to start somewhere, I guess. So that's the windowsill is a good start. At least he can control.
And by the way, you guys, you're absolutely right. Nobody drinks Foster's in Australia. They're all drinking Corona.
Long neck buds.
Right. Well, Julian, thank you very much for appearing on the show. And Inge, you did a great job as usual. And to our listening audience and anybody who's watching us, we'll give you a big wave. And Chris is giving a bigger wave. How did you get the bigger wave?
Hey, get closer to the camera.
Okay, I want the jacket I bought you back. Just kidding. We got new jackets today.
Yeah, we did. New jackets.
So we'll have to show them off at the IA show. Anyway, thanks everybody for listening. We do appreciate it, and we'll see and hear you next week. And remember, the most important thing you got to do is think blue. Good night, everybody.
Good night, everyone.
KCAA Loma Linda, 1050 AM, 106.5 FM, and now 102.3 FM.